And first thing we need to do is we have one remote participant. So somebody would like to make that motion.
And it's going to be for A. It's going to be for option A. And it's Thomas. It's not here.
Thank you.
I move that Thomas
Thomas Underwood.
Thomas Underwood,
Unsworth.
Underwood's request to attend to today's what? Unsworth.
Unsworth.
Excuse
This is
me.
like a best of every time I type my name into the word.
Request to attend today's meeting of the JMRL Board remotely due to a temporary or permanent disability or other medical condition that prevents his physical attendance be approved.
Here a second.
Aye.
So moved. Welcome.
Thank you.
All right, first item of business is the minutes of our February meeting. Did everybody have a chance to review them? There, again.
I move that the minutes be approved as presented.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Let's go on to announcements first, and then we'll deal with public comments.
I have an announcement.
Really?
Yes. I wanted to officially welcome Ann Hemingway to the library board. Thank you for joining in. Thank you for volunteering your service. Ann is a new representative, a new trustee to the board from Charlottesville, replacing Lisa. Ann is an attorney who lives in North Downtown Charlottesville and is the former president of the Friends of the Library. And Ann has most recently served on the electoral board in Charlottesville and is especially passionate about a central library renovation. So I thought maybe Tony would be useful for the board to introduce themselves to Ann as well.
Sure.
So again,
Yes. I've known Ann for many years. I'm Tony Johnson, chair of the Board of Trustees of the Jefferson Madison Regional Library for a second time.
I'm Kathy Johnson Harrison. I've known Ann for a long time. Also, welcome.
Thank you.
Oh, I represent Charlottesville.
I'm Wendy Craig from Louisa. Know you, but welcome. I'm glad to meet you.
Thank you. Lisa Childs from Nelson. And welcome again. Thank you.
Mary Nicole, also from Charlottesville.
Mike Powers representing Albemarle County, and I was one of your election official worker bees.
Yeah.
If that's why you're familiar.
Oh, yeah. Election officials.
And hi, Ann. I'm Thomas Unsworth, an Albemarle representative in the Scottsville area, on my 4th year here on the board.
absent is Martha Ledford, who's the Greene County representative. Everybody except for one person.
Again, thanks, Ann. Thanks for doing this. Appreciate it. All right. Public comments. Oh, we have another announcement.
I don't know if I should do this now or at the end, but either way, a reminder that the Friends Library sale starts Friday, members night, and runs through the following week.
And I hear there's a second postcard in the mail as we speak with correct dates on it. Sorry, I didn't mean to point. The first postcard came out and it said that the dates were but anyway, I think there's another one on the way, so that's good. Yeah. Wait for the second. Okay. Any other announcements? All right, so we have a resolution and we'd like to recognize some of these folks who are here with us today. Tim Carrier, Angelina Cruz, E.J. Dowling, Brittany Emersworth, and Megan Smead for extraordinary service to JMRL and the community at large. Whereas the Jefferson Madison Regional Library wishes to recognize extraordinary efforts and achievements by members of library staff. And whereas on Saturday, February 25th, 2023, staff members Tim Carrier, Angelina Cruz, E.J. Dowling, Brittany Eversberg, and Megan Smead work together to manage an emergency health crisis incident at the Central Library involving a member of the public. And whereas the first aid actions of these staff members amounted to life-saving efforts on that day, recognized as such by the Charlottesville Fire Department. Now, therefore, be it resolved that on this 27th day of March 2023, the Jefferson Madison Regional Library Board hereby recognizes and extends their appreciation to Tim Carrier, Angelina Cruz, E.J. Dowling, Brittany Eversberg, and Megan Smead for their dedicated service, not only to JMRL, but to the patrons of Charlottesville, Albemarle, Greene, Louisa, and Nelson. Thank you.
Maybe one, and I'll get one, and I'll get a picture. And Tim and Megan are remotely joining us as well. So thank you to Tim and Megan. I'm sorry you couldn't be here. Everybody smile. Ignore the part where it says 2024 at the end. I'm living in the future. Thank you all so much.
That was the last time he asked me to proofread.
You, Chris, I think. Those
Okay, any other announcements?
No more now.
This is a period of time we set aside for public comments. Do we have any public comments? I don't see anybody here. Do we have anybody online?
We've got a few people joining the meeting online. If you would like to make a comment electronically, you can raise your hand in Zoom and be recognized now. Going once. Twice. Doesn't look like we have any takers for public comment.
Very good. Okay. Next item on the agenda is our continuing education for trustees, and they will talk about patron feedback.
Okay, thank you. So this is an opportunity really to close the loop for the board on some work that happened last fall, a chance to catch you up on what staff have been working on, but also to show you the changes that have happened since you all looked at a policy in the fall. So I've got a brief presentation. I promise it's not too long. About JMRL's new consolidation and analysis methods for suggestions from the public, feedback, and complaints. So in September of last year, you all approved a revision to the suggestions policy. I won't read the whole thing to you again because you already went over it. I'll just highlight this line at the top of at the bottom of the first paragraph where it says digital submissions are welcome either by email to feedback@jmrl.org or via a web form on JMRL's website, which was something that previously we had a couple of different versions of. Feedback will be shared with and addressed by the applicable library departments and will also be consolidated at a regional level for analysis of trends by the library director. Feedback may be shared with the library board or the general public at the discretion of the library director. So there are some directives in there for staff basically to figure out ways to capture this information virtually and to get it all aggregated together. Previously, we had a box, a physical box, which is still mandated here in this policy at each location with a form in it that looked like this. Feedback form, it still looks like this. Blanket just says, do you have any suggestions or feedback? And these the managers see at their libraries and send to me if necessary. A lot of times they end up being suggestions to buy a purchase. That's a confusion that we get quite a bit where somebody wants a specific book and they fill this out. But we really didn't have a good system for collecting all this and looking at big, large strokes of feedback there. So created this new form, new link on the webpage. It basically says JMRL values your input. Visit the library's online form. It's to the top right of the classic website. And the form itself, it only asks 4 questions. Which location do you want to provide feedback for? What's the topic? Please share your feedback. And if you would like a response, leave your email address or any other identifier. So now that we've had that up since the very end of December, it's just been a few months here. We got a little bit of response to begin with, about 20 responses. And we can look at these kind of broader categories. Like where is the feedback coming from? You can see in the first few months, not overwhelmed by feedback, but of the 20 we got, it was pretty evenly split between the branches. So Central, Crozet, Northside, about 20% there. And then the categories that we used are JMRL's collection of materials, either physical or digital, the physical space of the library, our online services, programs or other offerings, customer service, and policies or procedures. So out of the initial from the public 20 responses that we got, the majority of them were other. But then closely followed by online services and policies and procedures. So this is a snapshot just of some of the feedback that people shared there. And it's all over the place. This is a very broad idea that people can leave whatever feedback they'd like. So it's between, I'd like you to buy this book here. I was happy with this service. It was a puzzle and game swap at the library. I'm interested in volunteer opportunities. This thing isn't working. I was having trouble accessing Ancestry. My library card expired, which happens every 3 years, and a suggestion to start a seed library. So you can see that people are not necessarily using this just to say here's something that's wrong, but also to give ideas that they have. One good thing that came out of this that the policy committee talked about quite a bit the end of last summer and into last September, and Ginny, I think this was directly your idea, was to have a way to capture the staff feedback that they hear from the public, that kind of point of sale feedback where somebody will come up and just say, oh, I love this thing or that thing. So we set up a parallel form that's on the staff intranet that asks the same questions, basically. It says which location, what's the topic, what's the feedback, and if the person needs to hear back from the library, then capture their information there. So this is on the staff's intranet, and if they hear something, they can fill this out right away. We got 66 responses for that just in the past few months because we explained it to staff and asked them to use this form or whatnot. And you can see that that's pretty evenly split amongst all the branches. By a hair, Crozet submitted the most, but then Green submitted quite a few, and on down the line, Central, Northside. Most of those, and it's not surprising to me, were about customer service because that's a lot of the very immediate impact that people want to share. That thank you so much for helping me with this, or things didn't go the way I expected. Generally, it's thank you very much for sharing this and for helping me with this. Then after that, it was something about the physical spaces, and then just kind of a catch-all other category. Beautiful, warm, and friendly. Thank you card somebody left to the staff there saying all the staff at the Greene County Library. We're so grateful for everything you do to make our library such a fun place to visit. Somebody else came in with a small family and just said, we love having this space and it brings us joy. Then somebody had a suggestion that they just mentioned to staff that they requested a change for a fine to go to credit their future account. Somebody loves suggest a purchase. So thank you, Sierra and Meredith, for working on that. The other thing that we've been able to do here is start to aggregate some of the online feedback that JMRL gets, because that also comes from all over the place. People will leave a review on Google Maps for a library. They will put something on social media. They will send a comment to our webpage. They will tweet about it. So we those things were coming from everywhere. And we're going to try as best as we can to cast a wide net and get all that stuff in one place so that we can periodically come back to the board and show these types of graphs, or if we keep seeing themes that are repeated over and over again, know that we need to address something. So the great improvements here has been that this input goes directly to managers and administration. So when a member of the public fills out one of those forms and they choose a location, it automatically goes to the manager of that location and to me. The managers are tasked with responding if it requires a response, unless I intervene and say, hey, I better answer this one. Like sometimes they will get a question at a specific location that is more of a regional question. For example, a question about an out of area fee that comes to the Scottsville branch. Well, the staff there can handle it, but that's really a whole JMRL issue, not just the Scottsville issue. Data is available and aggregated in a spreadsheet, so it all drops into one place. It's easier to access, track trends over time. It's an avenue to capture individual branch and system-wide data, and it's useful for our strategic planning, budgeting, and service evaluations. So short and sweet CE, but I wanted to report back. The board had asked to see some steps taken to get this information all together. That's where we've ended up for now.
David, is it all automatic, or who's has to take charge of the final product? That you?
That would be me. Yeah, that's what the policy says. It says, that you guys will come to the director. Yeah, instead of then you. It depends on what it is. If it's something that needs to be addressed at a branch or a department, then I might hand that over to that department head or that branch manager. Say, hey, we look at this, the paint is peeling here, or whatever it might be, and they can deal with it. But
well, I was thinking more about putting the report all together.
Oh, it's automatic. Like those
Automatic
charts.
in terms
Yeah,
of
yeah.
just from the
That's just
Yeah.
that's the information that the Google Forms
Okay, it's-
collates and puts together for us.
So then it's,
So if you were to go put one, this is just a snapshot, but if you were to go home and put in a bit of feedback now, it would change those numbers.
okay.
You would only get a response if you asked to get a response.
Is there still an opportunity to fill out a?
Yes, the form and the box is still at every location. And now what we're doing is when the form comes in, staff are entering that into the spreadsheet. So it's all in one place moving forward. Mike?
So this is excellent, and thank you for putting it together. I think the payoff, the biggest payoff is, as you mentioned, identifying the opportunity to identify themes in a way that sort of wasn't as natural or easy before. I had one or two specific questions on the
Sure. You want to look back at it again?
the categories are, I'm guessing, are just somebody reads the submission and then picks whether this is a physical or online or sort of manually assigned. Is that correct?
No, it's self-selected by the person filling it out.
Okay, interesting.
It's a drop-down menu with those choices. These are your only choices when you're putting in,
Gotcha.
Which is why I think when they're self-doing it, it's all other.
other is the most popular. yes.
Because people are like,
Yeah.
I don't know what, I just want to fill in my thing.
Yeah, okay.
And we can tweak that, if we discover that all the others are one particular thing, then we could add that category.
And can you pop open briefly the online form itself? So I saw this a couple days ago because I had seen the link. In the intro, we have a separate link for the library name, feedback on the library name. And I know that we've been tracking that in a separate form, and we want to direct that into that other category. The last time I looked at that repository, we hadn't received any library name specific feedback since December.
Yes.
How long do you think that extra sentence would be necessary or included here, or what would be your criteria to just that we're no longer,
Right. Great question.
direct people to
The very first bit of feedback that came in through this form was about the name of the library.
Oh, yeah, okay.
We turned it on and put it up, and the very first thing that came through. So people are gonna, they're gonna use whatever avenue they can find in front of them.
Right.
But this actually, I think, replaced the library name box on the legacy site where you would click and
Yep.
go to the library name box. So my assumption would be that once the working group makes a final report to the library board, that this would then serve as the place to gather that moving forward, that it wouldn't be seen as a separate category. It would just be part of, give us your feedback about JMRL.
Okay, and you just would
We
manually.
would just have to, adjust that language there.
All right.
Other questions or comments?
I have one question. I can't read that.
Sorry. You can't, I don't know if I can make it bigger either because
Is the person's age asked?
I don't think so. No.
So you don't know
We
whether
don't know.
young people are filling.
Yes, we do not know. We didn't know in the paper form. It's just tell us anything. Is that something, I think that would be useful information to have moving forward.
But just terms of programs that.
Yeah.
Young people have.
My guess, my gut, Ann, says that most of the feedback would come from parents of children and not from children directly unless they were older, like teen aged or whatnot. So sure, we could add that. I can't think of a good reason not to.
And it would be broad categories as usual.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
Age
school
category.
age.
Also, if you made it,
Yeah.
maybe make it optional.
You make it optional, that's a good idea.
So, they don't have to fill it out. A lot of forms are like that. They say, if you want to put in, what county you live in or how. I just want to commend you for allowing there to be an avenue for social media comments to come in through the staff form, because I feel like a lot of people do use that as their sort of help desk in the past in companies that I've worked in, that people would kind of be reporting things through social media and expect to get a response. So I think it's a really great idea to corral those comments, because you might actually get more comments from teenagers or other people who might not go to them.
It's really Google that we get a ton of questions where people will ask questions like, is there a notary at Greene today? And they'll put it like, you go to the Google page for Greene County Library and there's a space to ask questions and they just throw it on there. Not I don't know if people's assumption is that Google knows the answer already, or if that's going directly to the organization. And it turns out that it is going to the organization because we get.
So you're correct.
Yes, because you can own a site basically. So JMRL has owned all the libraries, and when questions come in, actually, right now they create an IT ticket because it goes to our web manager, which automatically creates an IT ticket, and she'll shuffle them off to, usually it's Jennifer who answers them, but sometimes it might be Brittany if the question was, my card is expired or something like that. So, but they weren't being gathered in one place to see what types of questions we were getting until now.
But I mean, I know that you're making a lot of effort with your social media posts. So if you were to put up something about an event and then you were to get feedback from people saying, I like this event and I would like more of those events, that would be collected on that staff form so that you would have a sense of how the public feels.
That's the goal.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea.
And managers can speak more about how often. I assume that we weren't going to capture every bit of feedback that people are getting at a busy service desk. You know, if you're trying to do 5 things at once and somebody says to you, hey, great job on that program the other day, that might not necessarily make it in just because they have to prioritize the service at hand. But this will give us a better picture than we had before. Anything else?
Any other questions?
Good suggestion, Jenny.
Yeah, I think this is very, very helpful, and especially going forward, we can get a little better idea for, things that we need to address or great ideas that we can incorporate. So, great. Thank you, David.
Steel.
Plagiarize.
Appropriate.
Association time here.
Are we having a wordplay teach there again? Really?
Yeah.
All right, committee reports. First is the library name working group report.
Yes, thank you. Last month at your meeting, I reported on behalf of the Library Name Working Group that there would be a final report for the board today in April. In March. But since that time, JMRL received a request from a jurisdictional partner to have a chance to review the report and provide feedback first. So the work is effectively done, and it's being sent out to Charlottesville, Albemarle, Green, Louisa, and Nelson to gather their input. And then we will present a final draft to the library board later this spring after incorporating any changes that need to happen there.
Questions about that process? Comments about that process? Okay.
Did we already send it, and did we give them a deadline for any response?
No, it has not been sent yet. I'm expecting to send it this week. I had a few from our last working group meeting, there were a few data cleanup things that I needed to do. So, but yes, we will give a deadline to ask for them to respond by a certain date.
Okay.
Within a few weeks, probably.
All right. The 5-year plan committee.
All right. So we had a great meeting in person. And we asked for some examples of other 5-year plans, and David went to State Library and gave us every single library system. That was a little over the top. We have been able to dip into them a little bit, and have already had some great feedback from people, some great ideas bubbling up. We have now split into subcommittees, and the subcommittees are going to meet every other month, and then the main group will meet on the other months. Making good progress. David has the name of all the subcommittees down. We decided to veer away from the values right now and have gone back to subject areas, and then are going to look at each subject area and how our values, how we operate with our values in each of those areas. What were the areas again?
There's one dedicated to community engagement, which is just going to be on methodology for gathering information for the plan itself. Another one on technology and facilities, one on access, outreach, and collections, and the last one on staffing and finance.
Yeah.
So 4 groups total.
Excited to see that, and some interesting, and as to the community engagement committee is looking at ways that they can gather feedback from the community, using some different ideas for that. So I think it's coming. Great group. And so I don't know when everyone's meeting. Ours is April.
Yeah, most people have scheduled something for mid-April. We asked everyone to meet in April and the full group will reconvene in May.
We're moving along. We will take less than 5 years for this. 5 years.
No, it's a 5-year plan. Have to take 5 years. Questions, comments about that? And Martha has arrived. Martha, I'd like you to meet Ann Hemingway, our new Charlottesville trustee.
Hello.
This is Martha Ledford from Green.
Yeah, sorry.
You had travel time, I understand.
Daughter's birthday. And we just lost track of time.
Okay, new business. We have a potential vote on the public comment at library board meetings policy, a draft of which is in your handouts. Mike, I think it's.
Okay. So we did a first reading of this and kind of talked through the high points and changes last month. The high point is that we're structuring currently we have a public comment period that with a sort of undefined scope. We've put a little more clarity that we have 1 hour at the beginning of a meeting, and then we chose that we would continue indefinitely if there are additional commenters, but that indefinite period would continue after all the other business items from that meeting. This happens only once in a while, so but we do want to have the structure in place if it ever comes up. We did stick with a 5-minute speaker period. That was sort of the other major kind of point of discussion. There's some pros and cons, and some comparable organizations do 3 minutes and so forth. But we felt that 5-minute meets our situation and needs the best. And just a few other structural things, requesting to state residency, some things about decorum and behavior of the audience in the room, a sort of almost a disclaimer or a little bit of informational point about if you have feedback or public comments about or feedback about library staff in particular, you're welcome. It's possible to come to the public comment and provide that, but there's other venues or mechanisms that we wanted to call to your attention, because ultimately that's handled by the library director, and people in the general public kind of don't necessarily realize that right off the bat. And then the last thing we had talked about, it's just sort of a catch-all closing paragraph about the library board president has the authority and responsibility to ensure the orderly conduct of the meeting. The previous wording, there was this group had some discussion about whether the circumstances where he could take steps were sort of enumerated, and we wanted to make that and broaden it out a little bit. And so we have a such as language here that gives those as examples. The other thing we discussed was just striking that and not having any examples, but we wanted to maybe have some indications of some things that we definitely don't want to see while allowing with the such as room for other circumstances that we can't foresee. So this is the updated language. So the blue is similar but new, and that's our that's the current and possibly final draft.
We have a bit of discussion again about that, as Mike said about that last paragraph. I think that's a good compromise. Questions and comments about this policy? As Mike mentioned when we were in Louisa, that this hadn't really been reviewed in quite some time, and of course we made liberal use of the public comment period over the past year, so good time to take a look at this in the end. I think we're ready for a vote on this as revised. That means you have to read it, yes. Do I hear a motion to accept it?
I'd be happy. So move to accept the revised public comment at library board meetings policy. Section 1.26.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And thanks to the policy committee for the hard work on this one.
Thanks also to Mike for rewriting the bottom section and to Alita for reviewing it as well.
Okay. Next up is we have an annual review of the circulation fines and fees and potential vote on this. I think the only change is, as we agreed to last time, was to remove at the head of the thing, it says for library users 16 and up, while we research the age of majority, which we call it that, in terms of lenders and borrowers. So we'll talk about that. Are there any, there are no effective changes in the rates?
No changes in the rates. There is a change in the per patron limit of DVDs from 5 DVDs at a time to 10. That's the proposal. That was the compromise proposal that JMRL managers reached. There was some discussion about doing away with those limits and some discussion about making them even tighter. And I think 10 was the consensus.
And then adding toy library kits, maker kits et al. To the additional fees for loss and damage.
Yeah, this is actually kudos to Brittany Eversberg, our circulation manager, who reviews this annually and comes up with the most logical things here. So we just wanted to make sure that a few of those were called out because they might not have been clear. People are checking them out and they might not be clear what category they were in.
Is everybody else okay with the?
I had it's more like, for me, a clarification. Okay, under that first part, the maximum fee per item is $10, and then you go to the library loan is $30, and so the maximum fee paid in full is that's for multiple items, right? Or it's $35. So seems to me that the maximum fine per item, and then the maximum fine if paid in full for multiple items should be, right next to each other. And because when you put that, to me, when you put the interlibrary loan in the middle of it, because you're saying the maximum fee is $30, then you're saying the maximum fee is $35. So that to me, that's
Using the numbers,
very confusing.
yeah.
So what would this is not a live copy. I'm sorry, because I could just switch it around and show you, but your suggestion, Alita, would be to move the interlibrary loan line here down one?
Yes.
I guess my question is, what does maximum fine if paid in full mean?
Yeah, that's why, and I put multiple items, I would say.
Yeah, I don't, is that interpretation?
And it's paid all at once. So we have people who come in that might have, $100 of fees if they returned 100 books late, but the maximum JMRL would charge them would be $35. Unless they were in collections, correct? But that's.
Yeah, and does that limit apply if one of them is interlibrary and one is regular item? I've got a $40 bill.
What's that? I see head shaking.
And I love your suggestion. I think, we could definitely switch it around to make it more clear. Patrick Kilmer is the ILO coordinator, but I do think that would apply to ILO.
The cap would apply. Yeah.
Well, it's a bit of I'm glad you're asking this because these are materials that we borrowed from other libraries. So it's not like it came from Nelson to Green. It came from, Mount Holyoke or UVA or something like that. So I don't know if that's the case, if we would charge them only $35 if they were significantly late. I think as long as the materials came back, we would just consider it to be a late fee. Is that right?
Yeah, it would be the overdue fee. So that's.
So it does fall in that same category. Okay. So to answer your question, yes, it doesn't matter if it was an ILL or not. There's just a higher per item limit for ILLs.
So Alita, tell me if you agree, since the cap does apply to interlibrary, it seems like it's in the right place. It's a cap that applies to everything, no matter what I'm hearing.
I think what you're asking for maybe is some clarifying language.
Right, yeah, whether it's.
So maximum fine if paid in full,
Multiply.
for multiple items. All at once.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And is it something to say maximum fine per item? And specifying that those are items in our collection? And then, I don't know.
Because you make a distinction
Between the interlibrary loan,
Is $30 maximum well, it's still the same.
maximum
right?
fine per item, and that's for, obviously, for items in our own collection versus.
Maximum fine for system-owned item, or regional library-owned item or something.
I was more just being opaque and right, trying to make David come up with something.
Here's one we can edit, so. I guess I'm just thinking through this too, though, because JMRL is the one that actually has to pay that money to the other institution. JMRL owes, if the person that we lent the book to is late, the fines come to the institution, not to the individual, because they're lending it to JMRL and then we're lending it out there. So I'm just trying to think through what are the repercussions there.
So we may owe 60 and we're allowing.
Yeah. Which is which is what we do for our own materials as well, but we have more control over our own materials.
So that last one refers to both interlibrary, multiple loans and not interlibrary.
Be any materials is the way that I'm hearing here. This does not come up that often, just in case anyone's worried that this is a common problem.
Are we going into debt?
Yeah, as a part, as a member of the staffing and finance committee. That seemed like,
So the suggestion here would be something along the lines of maximum fine is paid, if maximum fine is paid in full for multiple items. And
You
maximum,
could just put like a star and, as a footnote indicate what that.
okay.
Star, and then star.
How about this? Why don't, there's no rush to vote on this. Generally, this is a policy, but generally we consider it to be a schedule. So the board schedule and the library closings don't go through the policy committee. They come directly to you all because it's normally just minor changes and they're done annually instead of on the regular policy schedule. So why don't Brittany and I take this back, try to come up with some language, talk to Patrick, make sure we've got the right information here, and then represent it next month for hopefully a vote. And you'll be able to see it in the handouts beforehand to see whether or not it answered your questions, Alita.
Okay.
And of course, Alita, since you said something, that means that you volunteered to help draft language.
yeah.
And is
Solid
there
plan.
some that says what a juvenile account is?
We're working on that.
Figure out what a juvenile is.
This is why we took it off here.
Here, say 16.
1600.
Yeah, just to give you a little background on that.
18 and under, 16 and under.
The policy committee is going to discuss the patron confidentiality policy again, which is where it is laid out what the age is there. It's largely codified there. This change leaves flexibility on this, so we wouldn't have to change this again. So that will codify, here's what a juvenile is. And then we wouldn't have to go back and change this.
So here's a question. About how much do we have to send to a collection agency? Oh, I mean, how many accounts do we send to a collection agency in a year? Pick a number.
It does vary by year. We are evaluating the collections agency. It automatically rolls over if something's been billed for 30 days. There's always a timeline with it. And juveniles are never sent to collections. And fun fact, library accounts are never credit reported, which is what patrons are most concerned about when they come to me. So I try to clarify that with everybody, and we really just want the materials back. So,
There is a note, I mean, we get a report monthly, so
We
we
get
can
invoices.
figure it out, but it's gotten smaller, I think, in the last 10 years. It used to be hundreds of accounts.
Oh.
And now it's much more manageable because we don't have juvenile fines for one.
Right. Good.
So in the special notices, we also have at the last two bullets there. Should those things be up with the whole thing about the fines? Accounts with fines in excess of $20 will be blocked until 50% of the balance is paid. And accounts with items 60 days overdue go to collections. Because that all seems to be all this fine stuff.
All of a piece.
If you owe more than 35, you're never gonna have to pay 35 because you go to collection.
I think if anything, I hear your point there, Martha. I think the intention many years ago when this was schedule's first design was to give a per item cost at the top. Like, here's what it costs for these items. I think if anything, that maximum fine bid should move down to the notes. So you have up here, here's all the per item costs. And then at the bottom, you have the nitty gritty about like, oh, I'm really in arrears. And here's the
We
information.
have good news for you.
Yes,
Yeah.
we do.
The library is not gonna charge.
The
you.
whole answer to this section, the whole answer to this is here's Brittany's card. Please call Brittany. She will talk. But you know what we can do? We can come up with a draft that has both ways. We'll remove that information up and then one will remove this down and then the board can choose. which
Yeah,
one.
maybe titling that last thing maximum fines or something like that.
Sierra, you got all that?
I think that would help, because I think if we're confused, then I'm sure patrons will be.
Okay, great. Well, we'll come up with a few options for you all to look at.
Yeah, we can vote on it.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. All right. We move on to old business. Your perennial favorite.
Yes, well, this is the time of year for it. So Charlottesville, Albemarle, and Louisa are all currently recommending full funding of JMRL's fiscal year 24 request. Green and Nelson are still working on their proposed budgets. So the picture is not as clear there, although in Green County, their entire contribution was less than last year. So we're not expecting a problem there. In Nelson County, largely, we are talking with the administration and the elected officials about the potential ability to add some outreach services. So we're just trying to figure out whether or not that's something that they are interested in funding. So here are the dates that we are expecting our bodies to finalize their budgets in chronological order. Charlottesville is April 11th, so that's the first coming up. Louisa, April 17th. Albemarle, May 3rd. Green, May 9th. Nelson, June 13th. So JMRL's final budget will be voted on in your June meeting after we have all the information from all of our jurisdictions. Equipment budget requests from departments are in. They are currently being reviewed by business manager, the IT and collections manager, and myself. Once that initial review is finalized, we'll need to have a meeting of the budget finance committee to review those and decide what to recommend to the full board. That'll get sent out to you all and it will be voted on in your June meeting. Questions about the fiscal year 24 budget process?
So budget committee will be meeting.
I'm hoping that by the end of April, we'll have a proposed equipment budget for the budget committee to review. So anytime in May, we can meet, and that should give enough time if there are changes that the budget committee is requesting that we can take back so that the full board will have plenty of time to see it before voting in June.
Other questions about the budget? Certain lack of drama this year, which is always good. Brings us to the library director's report.
Okay. I will reiterate Wendy's announcement that the Friends of the Library sale is April 1st through 9th. Members preview is this Friday evening on March 31st. So update your membership if it isn't currently valid, and you can come on Friday night for the preview sale. Speaking of the Friends, JMRL is working on a memorandum of understanding with the Friends of the Library for use of a surplus box truck that JMRL has. JMRL has currently 3 box trucks. We have 2 of them that are in current service and then 1 that we would normally surplus at this point. But the Friends have need of it because currently their working offices are at the Gordon Avenue Library and the sale itself is at the Albemarle Square Shopping Center where they are leasing space. So I am working with JMRL's attorney, and AJ and I spoke with our insurance agent on the details. Seems like this is a mutually beneficial thing where we can basically say to the friends, yes, you can have use of this truck as long as you pay for all of the upkeep, gas and things like that. So there are no taxpayer responsibilities. The friends will pay for all of that. So I will be able to report on that to you all in the spring and hopefully sign off on it.
That would just be indefinite.
Yes, that would be indefinite. Like what would normally happen is that truck as public property would go to the surplus sale at the city of Charlottesville and it would be sold off to the highest bidder or whatnot. But I envision a scenario while the friends have need of it, that every time JMRL needs to purchase a new truck and kind of decommission one, they would have use of it. Caveat emptor, you know, it's an old truck, but it just has to get across town, whereas the JMRL truck needs to make it the whole circuit every day. But we'll probably have a date on the MOU saying it needs to be reviewed every 3 years or something. I reported last month that the drive up window at Gordon Avenue, the construction is still due to be done by the end of May, but the glass itself wouldn't be available until July, so there won't be any service there until that comes in. Actually, the construction is also delayed, so it hasn't begun yet. We're still hoping to have it done by the original window, which is the end of May before summer reading starts, so there's not construction project happening there. Even though the project starts pushed the initial start date. So we had closed the drive up, book return, anticipating construction starting at the beginning of the month, but it has been pushed, so it is reopened. Right now, patrons won't notice any difference there, but someday soon we're gonna have to close that and they're gonna have to use the return that's up at the top of the porch. Couple more things. Plans are afoot for some changes in the Monticello Avenue Computer Lab at Central. Our new coordinator, Michael Oden, has been organizing trips to digital media centers and maker spaces throughout the state and our region. We're going to be offering some specialized software in the lab there and hardware as well, potentially including some 3D printing services, full Adobe suite, audio and visual editing software. So just to make you all aware that we're working on expanding some services there, and we'll report back as those begin to come online with what's being offered out of that space. Highly successful same page program wrapped up over the weekend. Lots of very hard work from the staff. I'd like to especially recognize Catherine Fay from the head of Central Reference for spearheading the efforts. And I know I saw EJ there the other day, letting people into the Jefferson School for the Ross Gay event. The festival as a whole was a big success. There were lots of really well-attended events at the Central Library, so it was nice to see people coming in and out. I know Meredith was the moderator for a Crime Wave panel on Saturday, and then also made it to the same page event, so it's a lot of festival to book. But very happy to take part of it and very happy to have the same page go off so smoothly. The next large regional event to look forward to is the Poem in Your Pocket Day on April 27th that Brittany is organizing. Library staff will be rolling up poems to hand out in branches in the community that day. And somebody mentioned wordplay earlier. JMRL does have a team. This is the major fundraiser for the literacy volunteers of Charlottesville, Albemarle. It's at the Paramount on Thursday night. Our team is the Dewey Decimators. They have big shoes to fill year after year. They do well in this. It's kind of a trivia event. If you've never been, it's a lot of fun. And that's all I have to report.
Under other matters, there was the truck from the Albemarle County, talked to Albemarle. The community engagement folks were at Crozet Library last week, and I waited until everyone had finished kibitzing about traffic, restaurants, and housing, and stuck my nose in and said, you know, we need to renovate Central Library. And they sort of looked at me and I said, you realize that we pay half of the cost of Central Library through the county and the city pays the other half, and they voted down. So, you know, of course they were writing everything down. But just wanted to, you know, if you see one of these trucks around, raise your hand and say, you know, it would be great if we could renovate Central. Yeah. That was the only other thing I had.
And they're staffed by the Convention and Visitors Bureau, or who's?
They're county employees. You know,
I think they have a separate department that the name is escaping me now, but it's not the Visitors Bureau like Carla.
yeah,
They have,
it's community engagement or something like that.
yes,
Yeah.
community engagement. Thank you.
Right. So,
The Visitor Center has their own vehicle that goes out.
Right. yeah, I actually asked him, I said, would you like a comment that wasn't about housing, restaurants, or traffic?
Yes, that's just a county initiative.
I just like to jump back. Didn't want to interrupt you. And thank you for all your help with getting Louisa on the same page and working with Festival of Boat.
Did you make it to the live stream?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
And,
great.
I was talking earlier, I said we didn't have a huge turnout, but it's a start. And I think that once people know it's available and next time we know how to better publicize. But it was lovely. Everything went off fine and have to thank Sadie and Delia, which I did, for coming in on one with their day off.
The next big thing in Louisa is this job fair that they've been working on. So I know we're working on an ad for the Central Virginian for that. And also the county has agreed to co-promote the event on their social media or whatnot. So a lot of fun things happening at the Louisa County Library.
Thank you guys much.
Welcome.
All right, anything else? Agenda items for our April meeting, which reminder will be in Nelson County.
So we will look at the fines and fees schedule again with some revisions there.
Mhm.
Also, it was on my annual schedule to present to you all the board and budget schedule, which is where you all are meeting next year and what the timelines are for budget decision making. And then also the schedule of library closing. It makes sense to me to do those two things at the same time. There, next year is going to be another kind of tricky Christmas time decision because I forget what day it is, but when I was looking at them, they didn't line up exactly, so. There'll be a policy committee report.
And will we have the final report of the library name change committee?
It depends on the
The
responsibility
Feedback.
from our jurisdiction.
From our
Yes.
jurisdiction.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm expecting a continuing ed from Susan Huffman on the partnership memorandum of understanding that she has with Nelson County Schools. Since we're going to be at her building, she can talk to us about the work that she and her staff have done in partnership with Nelson County Schools.
And there will be a policy committee meeting before that meeting.
Yes, probably 1:45.
All right. Anything else we should have on April's agenda? Okay. My favorite part of the meeting, I can entertain a motion for adjournment.
And what's his last name?
Adjournment?
Amesburg, I think. I'm not clear on that, but I think that's right. Nobody wants to adjourn. Okay, fine. Well, in favor. And Ginny Reese will, I think, give us a tour of Green County.
Thank you, Jenny.
Thanks,
Take it
Thomas.
away. Thank you, Thomas. Have a good day.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Megan and Tim. I see you in the audience. Thanks for coming.